Hello, my name is Shirley Self, and I'm here to talk astrology. Tonight I wanted to talk about the houses. The planets are the energy, and that's what's acting. The signs are how the planets are acting, and the houses are where they're acting. Houses, there's a lot of different systems of dividing them up. The natural way would be to simply divide them into 2-hour segments, because then they would have the 12 houses in 24 hours and everything would be copacetic, right? Well, it's not quite that easy. So there are all these different systems of dividing up the circle of your horoscope into areas. Now, the system I use is called Placidus, and I've used it. I started out using it, and even though I changed to Coke for a few years, the Placidus seemed to make me happier, and so that's one I use. Now, those of you who want to try to use your horoscope to gamble on the lottery or the horses might want to use Coke. It's very successful, much more successful in telling you when and how to gamble than Placidus is. So people look at you and what they see is not your sun. That's who you think you are. They see your ascendant. The ascendant is what was coming up over the eastern horizon when you were born. And it is the most powerful point in your chart. You know, those angles, the ascendant, the descendant, the midheaven, the IC, are when planets transit over there, over those angles, that's when action happens to you. That's when action happens in your horoscope. Things are triggered then. Okay, so the ascendant's very, very important. It is probably the most important point in your horoscope because it's virtually your attitude. It's your quality of your willpower, your physical constitution, including virtually how you look. Now, I am Saturn ruled Capricorn rising, although my Saturn itself is ruled by Mars, so I tend to be kind of pushy. That's my ascendant. It's your personality, it's your vitality, your outlook on life. So the ascendant, get to know that ascendant. Check out its rulers. Often a chart will not. My ascendant is ruled by Mars because although it's a Capricorn rising, Saturn, which should rule that Capricorn rising, is in Aries, which is ruled by Mars, which is also in Aries. Now, if Mars was not in Aries, you could go around and around and maybe never find a final ruler of your ascendant, and I think that makes you a lot more versatile. Anyway, the second house is your naturally the Taurus house, and it rules your assets, your talents, your money. The senses of hearing and touch. Because it rules your money, it rules the way you meet obligations. It will describe the things you desire in your life because it is ruled commonly by Venus. The third house is your Gemini house, and it is the power of the mind. Now we're starting to get into your relatives. That's your siblings are in the third house. And I have 3 planets in the third house in Aries, and I had 3 brothers. So sometimes that third house can will describe your relationships with your siblings, and it may even describe your siblings. As the first house describes you. Now we're starting to meet your relatives. All your close relatives tend to be dealt with within your third house. That's your neighbors, also your neighborhood, and your primary education. That's grade school. I have Jupiter there. I had a very, very good primary education, even though I also have Mars and Saturn there. So I fought on the in the playground quite regularly. Now the fourth house is another one of those important cusps. This is the cusp of the Cancer house, the house of home. Now you would think that that would rule your mother, but that is which angle, whether it would be the midheaven or the fourth house, the 10th or the fourth house, those are your parents. The most dominant parent is in the 10th. When I was trying to figure out where my mother was she in the fourth house? Because, I mean, I've got Saturn there. I fought with her all the time. And she was a Capricorn, so it makes sense that she would be fourth house. But on the midheaven, I have Libra, and my mother was a Libra rising. So in order to solve this problem, my parents both have one sister. And so I looked for my sisters, or my mother and my father's sisters. I was not fortunate enough to have a sister. I just had brothers. Anyway, here's my horoscope. And Mom, let's assume Mom and Dad are here. Yeah. So each of them had a sibling. So 10, 2, wait, I'm going the right direction, right? All right. 1, 2, 3. Now there's a sibling of whoever's up here. 1, 2, 3. Right? Here's my siblings. 1, 2, 3. So this dominant parent up here, the sibling is in the 12th house. For the least dominant parent, the sibling is in the 6th house, opposite. So my mother's one aunt is here in the 12th house. That's the normal Pisces house. And I had my mother's sister was a Pisces, and Sagittarius is on that house. My mother's sister lived quite a distance from me. I loved her a lot and didn't get to see her much. My father's sister was a nurse, and so she very much fit 6th house. And she was, I have Gemini there, and I confided in her a lot. And she talked to me like few adults bothered to talk to me when I was a kid. So I was able to put my mother in the 10th house and my father on the 4th house cusp. And it really fits my father. My Saturn in Aries. Now, the Mars in Aries very much fit my father. He was a very energetic, active man. He was actually a Taurus. No, he was a Virgo, sorry. But Taurus rising Virgo. Anyway, my father, I have Saturn in Aries and the South Node right there on that IC. And my father was virtually gone to me all my youth. And didn't work that hard to make up for it after I was grown. So that Saturn in Aries, I loved him a lot and did not have him in my life. I can remember the times in which we interacted. I remember them vividly. But my dad was not there for me. You know, if a father can't be there for his daughter, it really slows her down in life. Look what a late bloomer I am. I have a lot of excuses for that. And one of them is my dad didn't like me. Anyway, where was I going with that? Oh, I was telling you about my father and mother's siblings. Anyway, the 4th house is very interesting because that's your grave. It's the end of the matter. If you're doing a horoscope of an event, you say, how's it going to end up? And you look at the 4th house, and that'll tell you about the end of the matter. So the 4th house is pretty much your childhood upbringing, and it'll talk about how easy it was to separate from your parents. You know, that is one of the meanings of Cancer is, you'll see it's a separating. It's separating. That's why Cancer kind of rules at birth. It's the separation. So Cancer kind of rules that time when you go off to school and have to start taking care of yourself, which is Cancer. So Cancer is also kind of your heredity. And the 5th house, now that's the Leo house, and it's what emotion Cancer desires. And that's really, it wants to, your emotions want to express yourself, and that's where you do it, is in your 5th house. It's your sexuality, it's procreation, recreation, it's lovers, it's gambling. Now if you're into gambling, set up your thing with Coke and look at that 5th house and see how all of the planets in it are aspect, and the ruler are aspected, and the ruler of that house is aspected, and then watch for your opportunity. And that's your children. That's your children. So, and it often describes your children. My mother had Moon in Aquarius and Uranus in Aquarius there, and she had 4 of the weirdest children you would believe. We don't resemble each other even. I mean, anyway, 5th house, that's the 5th house, and that's your kids. Good luck with them. Anyway, the 6th house is all that serves you and all that you have to serve. It's involuntary servitude. It's why it's got such a bad rep. Now, if you're into gambling and something good comes up on 6th house, ignore it. Ain't going to happen. So, because it's the things that serve you, it's your food, your clothes, it's your pets, your health. And health is a result, get this, health is a result of the conflict between the ego and the physical body. Does that make sense? The conflict between the ego. No, I want to do this. The physical body says, oh, please, don't do that to me. And the ego goes ahead and does it. And then you get sick. Oh, dear. Anyway, the 6th house is also where you master yourself. So, you know, if you want to master a skill, that's your 6th house. You go into apprenticeship in the 6th house. Now, the 7th house. That's the 3rd most important angle, and that rules your partners. It rules that energy over there that you have to work all your life to incorporate into yourself so that it doesn't come slamming at you from the outer world. Because those energies that you don't own in yourself, that you bounce off somebody else, you know, you're projecting them, and they've got a nice hook, so they bounce off of them and they come and hit you harder than they should be. I mean, they're just, the rebound is not as comfortable as if you were able to use those energies straight out. And as Aleister Crowley said, learn to use that 7th house, because if you don't use those energies, if you don't use your talents, if you don't own yourself, the world will. Anyway, 7th house, now that's your partners. That's the one you're looking for. So it will tell you pretty much about what you're looking for in a partner and how successful you'll be at keeping them and etc. Because the 7th house is also your house of open enemies. It's the community you live in. It's your give and take with other human beings. It's the law. Libra, the 7th house is generally the Libra house. As I didn't tell you, but the 6th house is your Virgo house. The Libra house, Libra rules the law. And the law rules how you get along with other people. So the 8th house, now we're getting into some nitty-gritty. The 8th house is the Scorpio house. And it's your house of liabilities. It's other people's stuff. You know, it's the, where's the 8th house over here? It's the 2nd house, the 8th house here. It's the 2nd house from the partner. So it's the partner's money. It's other people's money. And it's sex and death. And sex is called the little death. because that's where you virtually die to yourself. There's this, Scorpio rules the pit of the stomach. And that's, you know, how you, sometimes the world will conspire to set you right down into the pit of your stomach. You go, oh my God. And that's Scorpio realization. Often it's a realization of your powerlessness. But Scorpio is your power. That is a power of, it's a power of initiation. The power to own yourself, to use to express yourself out into the world. That's the third chakra up. It's a real important one. It's nice to meditate on and breathe into that chakra, because it really helps you to bring your power up through the heart. It's important. Initiation, the death card, you know, the death card is, sometimes it means death when I pull the card, but usually what it means is, oh, you finally got free from that bit of crap, or you finally got free from that obligation to somebody else. What it is, it's a breaking free to own your own self, your own power. Other people not using it. That's the death card. It's the card of character. The skeleton is a symbol of your basic character, your basic structure. And that character is free of anything that would hold authority over it. And that's the death card. I don't think I've ever gotten that death card at a death. Anyway, now the 9th house, that's the higher education. That's where you find your guru, I suppose. It's religion. It's your belief system. It's also where you get to travel and meet strangers. It's a Sagittarius house. Sagittarius is ruled by strangers. It's interesting to me that the United States, the Sibley chart, the chart I like, and the chart of so many astrologers use, is Sagittarius rising, and we're a nation of strangers, and we act like it too. We have the moon in Aquarius, and we've never committed to each other. And because I think there's not a tradition of people with the land, that it kind of unhinges us and makes us kind of drifters, not connected to a place, not grounded. There, that's a good way to put it. So the 9th house is religion, your belief system, philosophers. It's also, Sagittarius is your ability to embrace life, because so much of embracing life is not embracing here, what I have right here, but going out your door and seeing what out there is new and unusual and interesting for you. Because higher education means you have to get out of your comfort zone. Yep, that's, I hate to tell you that, but that if you can't get out your comfort zone, you're never going to get a higher education. Okay, the 10th house. Now, this is the second most important angle in your chart. And anything going over that 10th house, transit or whatever, is going to trigger action in your life. Now, in my chart, that's my mom. It's your career, and it's your relationships with those people who have power over you. And it was interesting that my North Node is up there to have a relationship, wanting me to have a relationship with my mother, and not fight with her all the time, which was my Aries in the 3rd house. Anyway, now we come to the 11th house. Now that's, the 10th house is your Capricorn house. It's your house of ambition and success. The 11th house is that circle of friends and acquaintances. It's the Aquarius house. And it's where you find your ideals in relationships. You analyze what you've got in that. And I've got Scorpio in that house. And my ideal relationship is a very deep relationship, which is deep and open. Scorpio. Scorpios are getting naked with another person. It is being yourself unapologetically. Anyway, the 11th house is also your idea of happiness. And if you have afflictions to that house, it's hard to feel happy or contented. And the 12th house. Now, this one is lovely. The 12th house is the subconscious. It's the Pisces house. And virtually what it is it's the limiting power of the current level of consciousness around you. It's the limiting power of the understanding that you're living in. It's also because it has that limitation, and you have to really work to get back beyond those limitations, those cultural limitations. And there are also genetic limitations there. If you have problems in the genes, the 12th house will show that. And it's your house of self-undoing. And it's your house of hidden enemies. And often you are your own hidden enemy. And it's the 12th house. The houses can be grouped in ways. The house of relationships would be your 3rd house. That's your siblings. Your 7th house, your partners. And your 11th house of your friends and advisors, mentors, acquaintances. The psychic and terminal houses are 4th house. Now that's the grave, so it's very terminal. And it's your environment that you're born into. The 8th house is a death of other people, and it will also describe what you're going to die of. The 12th house is the house of confinement and loss. But all of these houses, the 4th, the 8th, and 12th, if you've got planets there, it shows definite psychic abilities, which may be benevolent or pain in the butt. Even if you've got them, you have to learn to use them, because if you don't learn to use those psychic abilities, it can be a very uncomfortable, harassing you, making you paranoid, stuff like that. What else did I want to tell you? The Trinity of life. That would be the 1st, the 5th, and the 9th, because the first house is the body. The 5th house is the soul, and the 9th house is spirit or mind. So that's my brief take on the houses. They are, you have to have a good time, or at least a good approximate time, to pin those houses down for you. If you've got a birth time of 1:45, be suspicious. It's probably moving when doctors tend to put down every 5 or 10 minutes instead of every 1 minute. Anyway, and there are ways of narrowing it down if you don't have a good birth time. There are ways of finding out. It's called rectification. And I've rectified my husband's horoscope to one who I think is an admirable person, like he is an admirable person, so I think it fits. Anyway, that's enough that's enough for tonight on the houses. I wish you well, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.